Ready to go, Minister? Okay. Right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for questions for the Minister of Communities. I will start with the listed questions, and I call on Timothy Gaston. Timothy.
Jimon.
Minister.
Neither my department nor any of its arm's-length bodies have provided any funding to NECAP since 2017.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and I welcome that confirmation from the Minister that no money from your department has been provided to NECAP, and I trust that will continue going forward. As the Minister responsible for local government, what are you doing to stop this pro-IRA rap group from turning Belfast City Council-owned Boucher Road playing fields into their personal propaganda stage?
Minister. Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, the member will be aware that although I oversee local government legislation, it is up to individual councils to make their own decisions in those regards. But I hope that local councils would take into consideration some of the good relations issues that have been raised in light of some of the comments that have been made by NECAP, and not only by NECAP, but all of those that would seek to engage in what is essentially the glorification of terrorism.
Mr Buckley.
Speaker, would the Minister agree that both the UK Government and Irish Government would need to fully distance themselves from the funding of racist, anti-Semitic and sectarian state sponsorship in the view of NECAP? And would he further agree that some members in this House who suggest it would be mad to complain about such comments from NECAP is quite irresponsible, to say the least?
I completely agree with the member. In fact, I think it's not only the right thing to do, but I think it's our responsibility to call out behaviour such as this. There are always things that we can disagree with that other people do in the arts sphere, but this is going far beyond anything that comes anywhere close to just dealing with artistic licence. This is the glorification of terrorism, and this is also calling for violence towards MPs. So not only should there not be criticism of that, I think it's incumbent upon us to call that out, and I would also call on the UK Government and the Irish Government as well to consider their actions in this regard.
Mr McMurray.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can the Minister outline how funding decisions for cultural and artistic outputs balance freedom of expression with public accountability?
Well, he'll be aware that the Arts Council is the primary body responsible for funding the arts in Northern Ireland, and they have policies that help them to work out where those boundaries and where those barriers are. For example, they have their good relations policy and their equality policy, and I obviously, as Minister for Arts, want to make sure that we do everything that we can to showcase the wide range of artistic talents that we have in Northern Ireland. But let me be very clear, that should never come at the expense of standing up for what is right and standing against clearly what were, in these circumstances, the wrong comments.
Mr Carroll.
Minister, can you detail whether your department have given any funding, either through community arts funding, to any organisations that have publicly been singing up to our necks in Fenian blood?
Well, as he'll be aware, it's up to the Arts Council to determine funding policies and everything around that in regards to their policies. They have their own equality and good relations policy, and it's only right that those are fully implemented, and where the standards have fallen below what is expected, that action should be taken in regards to that. What I won't do, however, is what some are trying to do, is judge the entire bands community by the actions of a few if they have fallen beneath expected standards.
Mr O'Toole.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Minister, I don't think anyone should trivialise when individuals trivialise violence, whether they're artists or not. For the sake of consistency, can I ask that when he met the Loyalist Communities Council, was he clear with them, and did he explicitly say to them the trivialisation of violence, including by Loyalist paramilitaries, was wrong?
I have been consistent on this. I have not trivialised this, and this was part of my discussions as well. I made it clear that I'm looking to the future. I made it clear that there is no role for violence or threat of violence in our society, and the member shouldn't need to ask that question, because I've been entirely consistent on this. No matter where it comes from, violence and the threat of violence is wrong, not only now, but it always has been, and no one should ever seek to justify it.
Mrs Erskine.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Question 2.
Mr Deputy Speaker, a total of 37 applications were submitted under the Northern Ireland Football Fund's performance programme from 38 different clubs. One application was made jointly by 2 clubs and one application was received from a local council in partnership with a performance club. Applications are currently being considered and decisions will be taken in the near future. I hope to announce the first projects to be taken forward under this rolling programme of investment from late summer 2025.
Mrs Erskine for a supplementary.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer there. The Minister will be clearly aware of Dungannon Swift's win in the Irish Cup final recently. I hope you'll join with me in congratulating them. But Dungannon Swifts is testament to homegrown talent, and particularly in terms of Dungannon youth and bringing grassroots sport to areas and giving people an opportunity. So will the Minister ensure that funding through his department inspires the next generation and that grassroots funding will be prioritised?
Absolutely, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'm more than happy to congratulate Dungannon Swifts on their incredible victory, and I know the member has written to me and has asked me to host a reception here in Parliament Buildings, which I'm more than happy to do. She's absolutely right to highlight the importance of grassroots sport right across Northern Ireland, and in particular in regards to football. I'm looking forward now for attention to be turned towards the grassroots element, and I hope to make an announcement on that in due course and of course help grassroots sport right across Northern Ireland.
Mr McNulty.
I wrote to the Minister about this fund in March, and at that time he couldn't tell me the number of applications to the fund or the total value of funding applied for through applications to the fund. Does he have those figures now, and what action will he take to reduce any unmet demand? And do you have any figures that quantify the downstream value of active participation in sport from a grassroots level across the board?
Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, I would say it's almost unquantifiable in order to measure the impacts that sport will have in Northern Ireland, because the benefits are huge right across the departments that we have here in Northern Ireland. You will be able to see those impacts, whether it's in health or education, potentially even in the justice system as well. Getting people, especially young people, involved in sports at that grassroots level has a huge impact. That's why I'm such a strong supporter of it. I don't have in front of me, and I haven't seen yet, the full list of applications, but I can reiterate what I said in response to Mrs Erskine, that we've had a total of 37 applications from the performance clubs.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr Crawford.
Please.
Minister.
Mr Deputy Speaker, my assessment is that through the £28.9 million that my department has allocated in 24-25, successful outcomes were delivered, but if we are to address economic inactivity and see more disabled people thriving in work, we must significantly invest and increase the capacity of existing provision and implement new provision.
Crawford for a supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answers. Minister, I understand the paper is with you currently and your department on whether your department will continue funding the employment support scheme. Can the Minister advise when he will make a decision, and if it is to cease the funding, how will he ensure that those who require this support will not be adversely impacted?
Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, we have a number of employment support schemes. Some of them have been dependent upon direct finance from the UK Government. I hope to be in a position very soon to come to this House and announce the budget decisions that I have made. But I absolutely believe in those programmes, first of all because I believe in the dignity of work and believe that some people need help to get back into work, and that should be provided because it is good for them and good for society, but also because of the economic benefit in return that we get from people being in work. I'm absolutely committed to that. It's a significant part of my anti-poverty strategy that I brought forward last week, and I look forward to that being supported fully.
Mr Kingston.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank the Minister for his answers so far. Does the Minister agree that we should be helping more people with disabilities get into work, and what action will he be taking to ensure that happens?
Yes, absolutely. I've met with many disabled people who have told me about their desire to get into work, but they've also told me about the barriers that exist to them getting in to work. We have 325,000 people in Northern Ireland that are economically inactive. 122,000 of those have a disability or a long-term health condition. We need to make sure supports are in place to help those, and we'll be bringing forward actions in both the anti-poverty strategy and the disability and work strategy to make sure that that happens hands and we see a real positive change in people's lives.
Mr Blair.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank the Minister for his replies. Can I ask the Minister what actions fall under his department's direct ownership within the Disability and Work Strategy, and how these will be prioritised for implementation?
Well, that strategy will be coming forward shortly, but it is, of course, important to note, first of all, that it will be an executive strategy, because it's not something that this department deals with alone. But there are a number of barriers that are holding people back getting into work, and some of those employment supports can be delivered through my department. That's something that I have been doing, but it's something that I will continue to do, and hopefully we'll be able to ramp that up in a coordinated way through the Disability and Work Strategy.
Mr Delarky.
That a whole question for.
I met with representatives from Belfast City Council and Coltis on the 26th of March, during which I advised that I am happy to support the FLA and look forward to working with partner organisations to ensure it's a successful event.
Mr Delarky for a supplementary.
Well, thanks to the Minister for his very short answer. It's great to see the FLA coming north again. It was in Derry in 2013 and a fantastically successful event. What's your department doing to support grassroots organisations such as Coltis?
Well, the event itself will clearly be a responsibility for Belfast City Council to promote, but I have offered any assistance that the department can give. We're happy to do that, and to support organisations right across Northern Ireland that want to promote the culture and music of the area. And that's why I think it is so important that this event is coming to Belfast, so that we can showcase not just what the city has to offer, but hopefully various music and cultural traditions from right across Northern Ireland.
Mr McClellan.
Minister, at the last Communities Question Time, you confirmed to me that you would be happy enough to attend FLA Ceol na hÉireann in Belfast if you had received the invite. Can you tell me, have you received the invite yet?
I haven't received the invite yet, but I made clear at the meeting that I had with the organisations, with Coltis and with Belfast City Council. I'd be more than happy to support that next year, but with it being more than 12 months away, they maybe haven't got the invites out just yet.
Ms Mulholland.
Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Minister, can you outline how the FLA will contribute to the development and delivery of the department's strategic aims when it comes to arts, culture and shared community spaces?
Well, first of all, I hope it will put the spotlight on Belfast and on Northern Ireland, and I hope that it will inspire more people to get involved so that they can understand the rich artistic, cultural and musical traditions that exist in Northern Ireland. We'll certainly be looking at actions that we can take to ensure there's a legacy from this event.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr Buchanan.
Please.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I'm pleased to confirm that I've asked my officials to develop a programme to provide funding to fund small-scale renovation and improvement projects for community halls and facilities which deliver benefits to the wider community. I will be making a formal announcement on a new programme next month.
Mr Buchanan for a supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister, so far for your answer. Minister, do you agree that it's time for this to be a more permanent recurring fund year on year?
The members already looking forward to it being regular, and of course I'm more than happy for that to be the case, because I go out to community organisations right across Northern Ireland, and the state of facilities is often raised with me. In fact, Joanne Bunting just had me out at Bloomfield Community Association last week, where we were discussing that very issue. So this will allow us to gather information and data on the vast number of community facilities that we have right across Northern Ireland, and I will look towards securing a recurring funding pot to support these facilities, which in many cases act as a fundamental asset within local communities.
Mr Harvey.
Deputy Speaker, that'll be Q7, Minister, please.
Sir.
Based on gathered evidence, it's apparent that the existing strategic strategy framework remains appropriate. I have therefore decided to retain the existing active ageing strategy, whilst instructing my officials to bring forward a new action plan based on the existing strategy framework.
Mr Harvey for a supplementary.
And thank you for your answers so far. There has been extensive commentary about the other social inclusion strategies. Can the Minister ensure the active ageing strategy is giving its proper place and the same prominence?
Mr Deputy Speaker, I believe in New Decade, New Approach there were 14 social inclusion strategies that were mentioned, and I'm certainly keen that progress is also made in the delivery of active ageing provision. Too often the older population can be taken for granted, and we saw this with the Labour Government's decision to cut the winter fuel payments. So I will continue with this strategy and the subsequent action plans, and look forward to taking this work forward at pace, subject of course as always to executive agreement.
Mr Gilden.
And Minister, given the growing numbers of older people facing poverty, can you advise the House when you will bring a statement here on the anti-poverty strategy which you brought to the Executive last week?
My intention is to meet, as we had previously discussed, with the expert panel and other key stakeholders. I intend to do that before it goes to consultation, but of course I will bring it to this House so that the members can have the opportunity to question me, and I look forward to that.
Kelly Armstrong.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Minister, I'm glad to hear that the active ageing strategy, the action plan, will be updated. But as Mr Harvey had mentioned, there are other social strategies there. I'm just wondering, Minister, if you could provide us with an update of when you will be delivering each of those strategies. I know you have a time frame for that. I'm particularly interested to see the LGBTQIA and the gender strategies. After all, we don't want just the good-looking ones at the front.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I want to progress these and make sure that we make a real difference for people right across Northern Ireland. So all of these will be considered, and we look at the actions that can be taken that actually will make a difference. But of course, all of these will be subject to executive agreement, and therefore I am not in control of the timeframes.
Mr McGrath.
And whilst the Minister is practically a youngster, as most of us are getting older and progressing in years, and we know that there will be an increasing number of older people in our communities, would the Minister agree with me that maybe some form of formal, official older people service, akin to what we have in terms of a youth service for young people, something of that should be developed so that organised activities in every area across Northern Ireland for older people to engage with, to have information about what's helping them, to tackle loneliness and social exclusion and all other benefits, that would be of great use to people as we grow older?
Well, I'm very grateful to the member for his kind comments. I'm always open to looking at ideas that can help make sure that we deliver for the people that we're sent here to represent. My only caution around that would be I don't want to set up another body that's there for administration if we can do those things in other ways. So, for example, I do believe there are good supports there. For example, the Make the Call service is one example of something that does predominantly help older people in our society, but whether it is through the actions that will be in the anti-poverty strategy, the housing supply strategy, money I've given for winter fuel payments or for supporting people, I'm committed to delivering for older people in Northern Ireland, and I'm happy to work with anybody else that will help me in that.
Ms McAfee.
Mr Deputy Speaker, environmental health officers have powers to deal with damp and associated mould issues through enforcing the statutory minimum fitness standard for all housing tenures. My department issued guidance on damp and mould to social housing providers in January 2024, and the Housing Executive has developed and is delivering an extensive action plan that will address the wide-ranging contributing issues of damp and mould within their properties.
And I thank the Minister for his response. AWAB's law, which is part of the Social Housing Regulations Act 2023 in England and Wales, requires social landlords to fix dangerous damp and mould within set timescales and address all emergency hazards within 24 hours. This will come into effect in October 2025, with His Majesty's Government also consulting in extending this to the private rented sector. Will the Minister be following this course of action?
Grateful to the member for raising this issue, and it is an important one. I'm looking for the most appropriate way forward on this. One option is the possibility of including some of the provisions within AWAB's law into a change in the decent homes standard. That may be the most appropriate response to that. Of course, we'll keep that under review.
Mr Milton.
Question number 10, Deputy Speaker.
Construction work on the Inner Wall City Public Realm project began on January the 6th, and works are scheduled to last approximately 18 months. Those works have been progressing well, and my officials continue to meet regularly to ensure this progress continues with full engagement with all local stakeholders.
Mr Milton for a supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for his response, and can I welcome the £1.2 million provided by your department to restore the Austins building in the city centre. Minister, can you outline any further plans that you may have in terms of restoring buildings within Londonderry city centre?
I'm delighted that we were able to provide that capital grant funding, and we will continue to look for ways in which we can help buildings see new use, because we do have many unused buildings throughout our towns and cities, and we want to make sure that we are looking at options that are available. But I hope this £1.2 million for Austins will be the start, and we will see organisations like the Inner City Trust work together with the department to make sure that's delivered.
Mr Durkin.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I welcome progress on the inner city scheme that the original question referred to, but will the Minister consider a regeneration scheme for Foyle Street adjacent to the city walls, where beleaguered businesses have suffered from the prolonged closure of the street due to Northern Ireland waterworks? There's good news that the street will be reopened to traffic at the end of this week. However, the street still could do with a facelift, and any intervention from the Minister would be welcome.
I'm more than happy to ask officials to look into that, see where that is on any potential schedule or list, and take evidence if need be to determine the need in that area, but certainly happy for that to happen.
Mr Blair.
Thank you. Question number 12.
Victims of domestic abuse are provided with support to both access and maintain social housing. When applying for a social home, victims of domestic violence are awarded primary social need points within the housing selection scheme. Following my decision to remove intimidation points from the housing selection scheme, all victims of violence, abuse and trauma are now able to access the same categories of points within the scheme for violence or the threat of violence.
Mr Blair for a supplementary.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank the Minister for that reply. Can the Minister give us any information on the work that his department or its agencies might be doing with other bodies to ensure that progress is made with regard to ensuring that victims of domestic abuse can be better supported through social housing, and how the department is helping shape such policies and partnership?
Absolutely, and there are a number of organisations that we do work with to ensure that this is the case, and in particular you'll see the outworkings of that in the Housing Executive's Domestic Abuse Action Plan. I believe that that has resulted in some good working with other organisations, including the PSNI. However, if the member has any further suggestions of how or who we should engage with, I'd be more than happy to hear from him.
Ms Bunting.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Minister has made mention of the removal of intimidation points and the impact that that might have on those who find themselves in the situation of domestic abuse. Could you perhaps outline exactly what the impact might be and how victims of violence and abuse in general, as well as domestic abuse, can be assisted by his new proposal to remove intimidation points?
Well, first and foremost, this is the levelling of the playing field, and we have seen that already start to work out. I received a very kind email from a constituent over the weekend who had been waiting for a long time and always seemed to have been passed over, a victim of domestic abuse and domestic violence, and has now received the home that she's been waiting on for a long time. So I hope that's the first of many people who are going to be helped by this changing policy that will mean that there is the levelling of the playing field. I don't believe that will solve all of the problems by itself, but it's an important start that we can make. But I will continue to support those who find themselves in this situation, whether it is through the Supporting People programme or other actions that my department or the Housing Executive can take.
Mr Tennyson.
Speaker. Minister. Mr Deputy Speaker, the anti-poverty strategy was presented to the Executive at the end of March, and its publication was agreed for consultation at the Executive meeting last week. I look forward to the consultation period, to hearing from people so that we can have an effective anti-poverty strategy in place.
Mr Tennyson for a supplementary.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for that answer. Minister, the strategy was heavily trailed in the media last week ahead of the executive meeting, and yet as we stand here today, neither members of this House nor the sector have seen a copy of that document. Why the delay, and does that speak to a disrespect to those of us in this chamber?
Mr Deputy Speaker, I had always said that I would consult with those that were involved in the co-design of the group before I publicised the document. That is meant as no disrespect to this House, but those that were involved in its co-design, I believe, deserve the right to be consulted as well. But I can assure the House I'm looking forward to its publication. I'm looking forward to that debate so that we can look at it, see what improvements could be made. But ultimately, what I believe we have is something that is realistic, something that is deliverable, and something that can make a change in people's lives.
Thank you very much indeed. And as Ms Brogan is not in her place, we will move swiftly on to topical questions. And I will call Mr McCrossan. Daniel.
Thank you, Speaker. Minister, I will follow on from Mr Tennyson in saying it is deeply disappointing that we learned of this executive approval of the anti-poverty strategy from the media last week. You were very public in that press conference in relation to it. It has annoyed quite a lot of people. You provided some form of an update. When are you going to actually come to this House and provide a statement as to what is in this anti-poverty strategy? And does it lack the same ambition as the budget discussion today?
As soon as I consult with the groups, I will bring that to this Assembly. Unfortunately, I did not hear the debate that took place today, so I'm not sure how useful or not that was, but I hope that we will have an opportunity to have a proper conversation around these issues, because what we do now have going out for publication shortly is an anti-poverty strategy that's something that is deliverable, realistic, and deals importantly with the root causes of poverty.
Mr Crossan for a supplementary.
Sir, I could be forgiven for asking this question. Why did you do a press conference and then say it's going for consultation at the same time? Surely that's preempting the consultation to some degree, and actually most people who've contributed to this process will be deeply annoyed by that. And can you outline if your department has ring-fenced any budget for the implementation of this strategy, or is it simply going to be like the child poverty strategy, sit on a shelf and do nothing?
It's not going to sit on the shelf and do nothing, and that's why I wanted to make sure that we do publicise something that actually will be deliverable and something that will make a change. It's going to be very difficult for us to ring-fence a budget for all of the measures that are within the anti-poverty strategy, because they're so all-encompassing, because poverty is not something, Mr McCrossan, that we deal with just with one or two simple measures or objectives. There are many different things that we need to do, and that's why it's a cross-departmental strategy within health, within education, within justice, within communities. Many of our departments will have a significant role to play. In fact, so much, maybe nearly everything that we do is connected in some way to poverty, so it is not possible for us to be in a position to simply say we're going to ring-fence this funding. I have heard for many months the importance of, before going out to publication, that we consult with the groups. I needed to get the executive approval first. Now that we've got executive approval for publication, I want to make sure we're consulting, and we'll certainly have the debate in this place after.
Mr Deputy Speaker, Minister, can I ask what your department is doing to support regeneration in town centres across North Antrim, particularly in addressing derelict buildings and attracting new investment?
Well, there are many actions that the department is taking to deal with these issues. I don't have the specifics of the investment in North Antrim, but I'm happy to provide that information to him. But it is absolutely key that we do invest in our towns and our cities, that we seek that regeneration, that we reuse those derelict buildings in particular for social and commercial purposes. And I hope that when I make those announcements in the coming weeks, you will see the seriousness of my commitment to that.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer. Minister, can you confirm if any additional funding or targeted schemes will be made available to small businesses looking to revitalise vacant properties in towns like Ballymena and Ballymoney?
Something that we are looking at, and there has been some success in other schemes, such as the Vacant to Vibrant scheme that we've seen in Belfast and elsewhere. The return on that investment has been incredible, and I think that should hopefully give an indication of where I will be placing resources in the coming years.
Corla, can the Minister tell us what engagement he had with the anti-poverty sector before publishing the anti-poverty strategy?
As I said in my previous answer, I'm intending to engage with the sector in the coming days before publication.
The Minister will be aware that there's a high degree of scepticism within the anti-poverty sector that the strategy is ambitious enough. And will the Minister give a commitment to listen to the sector as part of the public consultation process? And will he or has he invited any of the co-design groups to any briefings as part of that process?
Of course I will. There's not much point in having a consultation if you're not prepared to listen to what people are going to say. I am committed to making sure that we hear the different views, and if groups or individuals or political parties have ideas about what they would like included in that strategy, they have the opportunity to do that. Obviously, executive parties have already had that opportunity. Others will have the opportunity to do that as well. But what is important, as other members have highlighted, is the fact that we need to publicly we need to publish something that is actually deliverable, and there's no point having a lot of objectives and aims within the strategy if we're not able to fund them and if we're not able to deliver them.
Minister, can you give an update on when the disability strategy and the disability in work strategy will be presented to the executive?
I hope that will be within the coming weeks, but I don't have a firm timetable on that. But I do hope it will be very, very soon, because these are important issues, a significant part of the economic inactivity challenges that I highlighted previously, and I look forward to making sure that we get executive approval and move forward with those as quickly as possible.
Okay. Thank the Minister for that. Given the changes in disability benefits being imposed by the British Government, we obviously urgently need to see both disability strategies delivered. Can I ask the Minister what measures his department is considering to support disabled people to get into employment?
Of course, these strategies and all of the strategies that we talk about will not be fixed in stone. They do need to adapt to the times in which we are living, and I think the changes from the UK Government, what they have announced, highlight how important it is that we are able to be responsive and help in whatever ways that we can. Again, there will be responsibilities for all departments, but within communities in particular, we want to make sure that we are in a position to help those, for example, through employability programmes. I've heard time and time again from disabled people who say that the system works against them, that they aren't getting the help to break down those barriers into work, and those are the people that I want to make sure we can help in particular.
Mr McAleer.
Good. Minister, you may be aware that the Tyrone Fleadh has started in Fintona, County Tyrone. So it's going to be a full week of talks and music and parades and language and culture. I'm sure, Minister, you'll join with me in commending the Cultus in organising this fantastic event, and also recognise the important cultural, social and economic impact an event such as the County Fleadh has on local areas.
Absolutely. As I said in my answer to the previous discussions, I welcome any opportunity for us to highlight the rich cultural and musical heritage that we have. I'm not familiar with exactly what is going on in his own area. I'm more familiar, having been briefed by the organisers of next year's event, but certainly I welcome any opportunity to highlight those that encompass all of the musical traditions in Northern Ireland.
Graham, I thank the Minister for his response. The Minister could give us an update on the Heritage, Culture and Creativity programme.
Work is being taken forward. There are still a few changes that need to be made to that, a little bit more work to be done, because we want to make sure that is effective and make sure that that is fit for purpose. But again, in the coming weeks, it is another strategy that we will bring forward, and importantly, something that will make a real difference, because the arts sector in particular has struggled in terms of funding, in terms of support, and I want to make sure that we change that.
Last Concordia. Minister, can you give me an update on the timeline in relation to the Irish language strategy?
Well, last week at the Executive, we have agreed the next stage in the process, which is to take all of the work from those expert advisory panels, to look at that, to examine that in departments, look at what the impact of those will be, both for the Irish language and the Ulster Scots language, heritage and culture working groups. So we will take that, we will look at that, and then we will consider the next steps.
And Minister, could you tell me, we'll say presently, how many people you have working on the Irish language strategy within your department, and do you think it is sufficient?
Well, I don't know the exact number of people that are working on that strategy. I do believe it is sufficient, because we're going out now to the other departments for them to analyse and assess the costs and the deliverability of some of the recommendations that have been made. So the work is now handed over to those departments, and we look forward to hearing the responses from them.
Mr Deputy Speaker. Minister, can I commend you for bringing forward the anti-poverty strategy to the Executive? First time that this strategy has been brought forward, and 18 years in the making. Minister, you also succeeded in getting departmental collaboration and agreement. In this question session, you have talked about the importance that the strategy is both deliverable and effective. To do that, Minister, do you agree that you will need the help and support of all of your executive colleagues as outlined in the initial agreement on the issue?
Minister. Well, first of all, in answer to her first question, yes, I am pleased for her to commend me for the delivery of the strategy. She's more than welcome to do that. But yes, of course, this is the important point, is that this is not a DFC strategy. This is a cross-departmental strategy, because the issues that we need to deal with are found in education and health and disability and debt, substance abuse, childcare. It's about fuel poverty and place, and housing and advice services, and training and employment services. So we need everybody to work together on this, and we need to make sure, and I can't emphasise this enough, we need to make sure it's affordable and it is deliverable, because nothing turns people off more than strategies that are unachievable, that they know will never be achieved, and that is what creates so much dissatisfaction and disappointment in politics. So let's make sure that we can get something together, that we can make sure we deliver, so that we can actually make a difference.
Dodds for a short supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, maybe you would detail the child poverty statistics, and perhaps explain how the strategy will help us to drive down these figures.
So, Mr Deputy Speaker, in the last year that we have figures available, the number of children in poverty in Northern Ireland was 25%. In the whole of the UK, that was 31%. That's not acceptable. It's not acceptable 1 in 4 children in Northern Ireland are in poverty, and that's something that I'm determined to change. And I'm determined to change that by making sure that as an executive we focus on all of the issues that I have outlined, because in tackling poverty and in tackling child poverty, we need to take a whole system approach to this. We have identified, we've got the work, we've got the literature and all the reviews that have been done on this. We know what the issues are, and that's why I'll be bringing forward, hopefully in the coming week, the 3-pillar approach of making sure that we reduce the risk of people falling into poverty, we minimise the impacts of poverty, and we help people to escape poverty.
Sugden.
Minister, I understand the Riverside Theatre in Korean at Ulster University is likely to close indefinitely. I appreciate it's not directly your responsibility, but how do you feel that that will be the only council area, particularly on the North Coast where we need tourism, that we won't have this type of facility?
Well, I'm very sorry to hear that. If that is the case, you will be aware it's not a direct responsibility of the Department for Communities. However, after the adjournment debate in this place, I did write to the university around that. Of course, my officials will be willing to help in any way that we can to ensure that the arts can continue to develop, and I'm more than happy to discuss that with her.
Sugden for a supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. I appreciate that response. Does that include potentially looking at a new facility in the Causeway Coast? And obviously that would have to come with capital funding.
need to be very, very careful in my response to the members. You'll be aware of the budgetary situation that we find ourselves in, but of course we're happy to explore all options, and if we're not able to fund those ourselves, we may be able to signpost in the right direction.
Ladies and gentlemen, that completes the 15 minutes of topical questions.